Yo, what is going on, guys? Today we are watching creepy missing persons cases that were never solved by Trust Me Bro, 66.1 or 661,000 subscribers, which is a crazy number. Um, I might watch some of his other videos. He has some ones I've already watched through in my own free time, so I know he's a good YouTuber, but I don't know. I don't know what else I should watch, so. It's my first React video. Hopefully this video is not a nothing burger.
Crazy missing
Usually his videos aren't, so let's get into it.
persons cases that are still unsolved. Kenneth Lee Veach was born in Clark County, Las Vegas in
Oh, is this
1967.
that
He was always drawn to the
I think this is that M Cave guy, the guy who saw the M Cave and then went missing trying to find it. Yeah, some people think he probably is not alive anymore. Like he took himself out back and old yellered himself, so pretty sad case. I think I've seen this one already, but we are still going to watch this portion of the video.
nature that surrounded him, and throughout his adolescence into his adulthood loved anything that involved being outside and experiencing nature. Kenneth, or Kenny, was actually so passionate about his outdoor excursions that he had an entire YouTube channel dedicated to documenting his adventures, as well as his inventions, with the channel being named Snakebit McGee. The channel still exists to this day and has 73,000 subscribers, and it currently has 5 videos posted on it, with the most ominous being named M Cave Hike. The
Yeah,
reason why
that's
this
what I was
video
talking
is
about.
significant is what we'll be getting into, and is directly correlated with the mysterious disappearance of Kenny Veach. The year is 2014, and Kenny Veach is on YouTube looking at interesting videos, similar to what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And Kenny happened to stumble on a video that was rather obscure. It was a video of a son of an Area 51 technician, and in this video he was talking
Oh, so you're an Area 51 like conspiracist? Hold on, let's watch a little bit more into it and I'll give my assessment on this.
about things that his father had told him while drunk. After
Oh, he's listening to his drunk father, okay.
watching this video, Kenny left a comment describing a very odd situation he experienced near Area 51.
This ain't nothing. I'm a long distance hiker one time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base. I found a hidden cave entrance to the cave shape was like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find. But as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that have ever happened to me. Okay?
On himself. In the comment, he mentioned that when he was hiking in the Sheep Range, which is very close to Area 51,
He never mentioned hiking in the sheep range. He just said he found a cave. I don't know what you're talking
he
about.
discovered a cave that was shaped like the letter M. As he approached this cave, the cave made his body vibrate. And the closer that he got to this cave, the more that his body began to vibrate and feel unease. He described the feeling as uncomfortable and made him feel scared. So scared, in fact, that he didn't approach the cave any
Really?
further, and actually did the exact opposite, fleeing from the cave immediately and going directly back to his car, cutting his hike short. This comment was simply intended to share a peculiar story that happened also with Area 51, but his comment quickly gained attention. People began to reply to Kenny's comment, either questioning the authenticity behind it, sharing sympathy, or even motivating him to go and revisit this location to find the truth and dig deeper on what exactly was going on. After
Yeah.
getting enough responses of people either telling him his story was fake or telling him that he needs to prove his claim,
Also, sorry if my reactions are dull. I'm not that good a reactor. If there's nothing to talk about, I don't talk. But I will try my best to talk about what's happening in the video. But it's kind of hard to do that when there's not really a conversation to be had about what is happening because this guy's explaining it already. So, if I see a point in the video where I can say something, I'll say something.
or seek more truth by revisiting the cave, he planned a second trip. And in October of 2014, Kenny Veach returned to the Sheep Range outside of Area 51 in an attempt to
Beautiful
locate
mountain, by the
the
way.
M-shaped cave. This second trip was documented, and that documentation is the video titled M Cave Hike. Already, there's some interesting things about this situation. Specifically, that in this 20-minute video, Veach reported that he saw a black Ram truck watching him from the ridgeline in the mountain range behind him. This
So I'm guessing people think the government kidnapped him or something. That's what I'm guessing at least, but I don't know.
entire hike that he was having, and he was also not able to find this cave the second time around. But obviously, the mystery doesn't end here, and it's only truly beginning. After the first hike ending in fear and abandonment, and the second hike ending in failure, Kenny planned a third trip, where he publicly announced that he would be looking for the M Cave and be finding it once and for all. On November 10th, 2014, only a few weeks after the second attempt, Kenny Veach went on a third expedition looking for the M Cave. This third hike was like any other hike Kenny could have gone on. He packed a cell phone, a gun, and other supplies into his truck, and even informed his girlfriend before he left what he was up to and where he was going to be. He did not give specific details about his location, but he did tell her that he was going on a trip, he was looking for the M Cave, and he would be back at some point, which was typical behavior for Kenny. He was an experienced outdoorsman, and it wasn't uncommon for him to spend multiple days outside alone. Although when Kenny left for this third expedition looking for the M Cave, he was never seen again. After several days of not hearing anything from Kenny, his girlfriend reported him missing, and a large-scale search was underway. The search party looking for Kenny
Just imagine how terrifying that would be if you were the girlfriend. That would be horrible. And she still hasn't seen him to this day. I think it was either his mom or her, because he did bring a gun, as you saw. I think right here, yeah. So he has a gun in that frame right there. His girlfriend or his mom, I think they said that he killed himself out there. And that's just terrible to think about. I couldn't even imagine that being my significant other or a family member. And they just disappear and you never get any like reason for their death or why they went missing, where they are. You don't know anything. You don't know if they're still out there. I couldn't imagine that.
consisted of volunteers and officials from the Nevada Search and Rescue Team. And these men and women worked tirelessly day and night, searching high and low through mountains and caves of the Mojave Desert. One of the biggest challenges these search and rescue teams faced was the fact that the general location that Kenny said he was going was not an easy hike at all. It was mountainous. The landscape was dotted with old mine shafts. The area itself was isolated, and according to Kenny, an old forum
Looks like Nevada.
posts, it took roughly 10 hours of hiking to go from his car to the M Cave, meaning that this search and rescue crew had a lot of ground to cover. On top of just geographical issues, this area was also known for being dangerous, specifically because it was so remote and so isolated.
He also could have gotten attacked by a mountain lion or something like that. But again, it's not really a way for anybody to know because he's just gone. He vanished off the face of the earth. No, there's not been traces, no body, no M cave like there's nothing. He's just gone. He could have ran away. He could have literally done anything. They found, I think, like a watch or a wallet or something, or his phone, I think it was, at a mine site, if I remember the story correctly. That's all the trace that we have. And that's all we have so we know he actually went out there, but we don't know where he went after that.
There was reports of drug activity and even bodies being dumped in the general area. Not to mention
There was? Yeah, that's scary, bro. He either got killed by an animal or a person, trapped in a cave, killed himself, or died of natural causes like dehydration, something like that. Or he just fucking left. It's like we have no clue.
being literally beside a military base. There was also claims of reported chemical disposal in the area as well. However, even with this uphill battle that the volunteers and search and rescue team were facing, they still continued their search. And on November 22nd, 12 days after Kenny had initially left for this third trip to the M Cave, the search team found something. Near an abandoned mine
Yes,
shaft, one of the
phone.
search and rescue members found a cell phone that was confirmed to have been owned by Kenny Veach. But unfortunately, this was the only piece of evidence that was ever found. There was no piece of clothing, no other personal items, and no clues anywhere. The only information that the phone really gave was that Kenny likely got to where he was looking to go, as this phone was in the general location that Kenny described the M Cave being in. But that's where the facts end and the speculation begins. Because after the disappearance of Kenny Veach gained attention, people began to have a plethora of theories. Likely, the most possible and accepted conclusion to the story actually comes from Kenny's girlfriend herself. As
That's what I was
years
talking
after
about.
this entire situation happened, she was informed that Kenny's story was going viral online, and she felt compelled to leave a comment on Kenny's M Cave hike video. The comment is long, and if you want to read it in its entirety, on screen is a screenshot, and I will quickly mention the main points Kenny's girlfriend Sharon makes. One of the biggest revelations that Sharon shares in this comment was that Kenny had been struggling with depression for
Yeah.
many years. She, being his girlfriend, was obviously aware of this, and he had opened up to her, and he had made it clear to her that in the time leading up to his disappearance, it was progressively getting worse. And Kenny had even expressed his thoughts of suicide to Sharon directly.
Yeah.
That alone is extremely upsetting, both for Kenny and for his girlfriend, who
I was just about to say this. If you are feeling suicidal, or you feel like the world doesn't need you, or you feel like you're gonna kill yourself, call 988. Call 988 or the numbers that are on the screen. There is somebody out there for you that cares about you, even if you don't think it. There is somebody out there. Call 988 if you're thinking about, you know. All right, moving on.
who had to carry that burden with him. And if you or a loved one have experienced depression, then you know how upsetting even that part of the story is. One chilling quote Kenny mentioned to Sharon was that if he ever decided to end things, quote, no one will ever find me.
Yeah.
On top of sharing this quote, she also stated a very interesting fact, that Kenny had not taken his video camera for this third attempt to find the M Cave, which was odd because his second attempt was filmed, and he even hyped up his third attempt in video. So why would he not bring his camera on a trip that he publicly said he would be filming? Sharon claims that he didn't take his camera because he obviously didn't intend to record anything.
Yeah.
On top of sharing facts, Sharon also shared a few of her own suspicions. She believes that Kenny specifically left his phone in a mine shaft to avoid being tracked. And she even states explicitly that, quote, I believe he committed suicide. He battled depression for many years and would not take medication or see a doctor. He quit his job a little more than a year before he disappeared. Truthfully, I don't know if anybody could possibly make a stronger claim than Sharon. She was in a committed, long-term relationship with Kenny, knew the ins and outs of his personality and life, and was the last person who ever saw Kenny. However, with Kenny never being found, it's impossible to confirm these claims. And when facts aren't concrete, people are always going to make their own assumptions, leading to the other two theories surrounding Kenny's disappearance. The second theory is that Kenny simply experienced an accidental death, which is possible considering the conditions that Kenny was hiking in. The Nevada desert is harsh, with extremely hot and extremely cold temperatures. And specifically in the area of the M Cave, there was a plethora of old mine shafts to potentially fall into. However, the elephant in the room obviously is the fact that Kenny was experienced in this area. And on top of being experienced in this specific area, he was also an experienced outdoorsman, making this theory a bit tough to believe, but still plausible. However, the third theory is really just a conspiracy theory, and is essentially just the belief that Kenny was getting too close to finding something out. And for that reason, Kenny was killed by the US military.
But I don't think that's the case at all, because the fuck was he gonna find in a cave? Nothing. There's a 85% chance that he was going to find absolutely nothing in that cave besides bats, bat shit, cave water, and rocks. That's probably what he was gonna find. So maybe who's to say that's not what happened? Who's to say that the military didn't do that or did do that? I don't think so. No. It doesn't sound logical to me. I feel like it was just a cave, a random cave. Alright, I'm talking too much. I gotta get through this video.
Specifically so he didn't discover the secret of the M cave. It's definitely out there, but with no facts and no sign of Kenny ever being found, it's not impossible. Potentially one of the most interesting facts about this entire situation is that even though so many aspects of the story are still available online, Kenny's YouTube channel, Kenny's video about the M cave, Kenny's girlfriend's comment on the M cave video, the one thing that was removed from the internet was Kenny's comment on the original video that
Really?
sparked this entire situation. Whether
Really?
Kenny deleted it or someone else deleted it, the comment was there and somewhere along the line was removed. Nobody truly knows what happened to Kenny Veach and where he may be today, dead or alive.
Yeah.
Really quickly, before we get to the next two stories in this next story. It's Saturday, October the 21st, 1978. Relatively new pilot Frederick Valentich was embarking on a short training flight in a Cessna 128L light aircraft. The flight itself wasn't extremely long, only 232 kilometers or 125 nautical miles. And this flight was connecting Melbourne, Australia to King Island following the Bass Strait. At this point, Frederick had 150 total flight hours and even held a Class 4 instrument rating, which authorized him to fly at night with the restriction of only being able to fly night in visible meteorological conditions, essentially meaning clear enough skies to be able to see the ground, terrain, and other aircraft. Frederick had also applied twice to enlist in the Royal Australian Air Force, but was rejected each time due to inadequate educational qualifications. Although as determined as Frederick was to become a pilot, his grades weren't necessarily reflecting his passion. On top of actively taking training flights and also being in the Air Training Corps for the Australian Air Force, Frederick was also studying to become a commercial pilot as well. Although, even with all of his training, he failed all 5 of his commercial license exams twice. Even with failed exams and rejected applications, Frederick was motivated to fly. And this brings us back to October 21st, 1978. Frederick's takeoff was normal, and the beginning of his flight appeared to be relatively calm and uneventful. Although things began to get peculiar when he radioed to the Melbourne Flight Service at 7:06 p.m. It was in this radio message that he reported an unidentified aircraft that was following him at 4,500 feet. Air traffic control confirmed that there was no traffic at that level, although Frederick was certain that he was seeing something. Frederick replied stating that he could see a large unknown aircraft, which appeared to be illuminated but couldn't confirm the exact type of plane he was looking at. And then quickly after confirmed that this plane had passed over him, roughly 1,000 feet above him, moving at a very fast speed. Once again, air traffic control had no answers. Almost immediately after, Frederick radioed in again, saying that this aircraft was orbiting above him and that it had a shiny metal surface with a green light on it. And then also stated that this other pilot might be purposely toying with him in his aircraft. And it was with his next radio message that Frederick revealed something concerning. He was experiencing engine problems. But before Frederick could even finish his sentence, air traffic control was asking him, what kind of plane is this? To which Frederick could only say, it's not an aircraft. And it was right after he said these words. His transmissions were interrupted by the sounds of metallic scraping, all contact was lost, and Frederick was never heard from again. It wasn't long after the connection was cut that a search and rescue mission was underway, and a sea and air search took place to find him as soon as possible. The search went on for 4 days, and was concluded on October 25th, 1978 with no results. No sign of Frederick, no signs of his plane. The investigation was simply presumed fatal.
So, again, this is crazy because obviously aliens are probably real. Let's be honest. I do not think that well, maybe. In my opinion, I don't think that there has been aliens directly on our planet yet. Maybe they have been, I'm not sure, because I'm not anybody, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But why would they, if they did, right? Why would they kill somebody or kidnap somebody randomly? And how would they do it in an aircraft? What I'm thinking is maybe he was depressed that he couldn't get into the um Australian whatever whatever it was called, and maybe he just crashed his plane somewhere. But again, where's his plane? Where's his body? Maybe he crashed in the ocean. I don't know. Maybe he did get kidnapped by aliens or killed by aliens. I just think he might have crashed his own plane or faked his death or something. I don't know. This story sounds fake. But again, who am I to speak? Because I don't know what happened. All right, let's continue.
fatal. The story is obviously upsetting and doesn't end there. And I didn't even mention this earlier, but when this all took place, Frederick was only 20 years old. He was a young, semi-experienced, and also struggling pilot. Frederick also had gotten into legal trouble from some of his flights, specifically for accidentally flying into controlled air zones in Sydney, and even intentionally flying into clouds, which was prohibited for his classifications. Both of these are odd, because if you are dedicating your life to a career in aviation, why would you intentionally fly into clouds on
Yeah,
multiple occasions
it's like I
if
was
you knew
saying.
it could lead to prosecution, which in his case, it almost did? Those facts are interesting, but what's also interesting is a quote from Frederick's father, who stated that Frederick was not only a large believer in UFOs, but was also seriously worried about being attacked by them on his flights. It's even
Yeah,
stated that 6 days before his disappearance, Frederick talked to his girlfriend specifically about the possibility that a UFO could take him away. And potentially what's most odd about this entire flight that Frederick took was the fact that he never told anybody the truth of why he was taking this flight. Sure, it was a relatively standard training flight, but why on a Saturday evening? His flight took off at 6 p.m. and it
I'm
was a
thinking he's
multi-hour
faking
flight.
it.
It's reported that
I
Frederick
think he,
told flight officials that he was just going to King Island to pick up.
I think he either crashed his own plane into the ocean or he landed it somewhere. I don't know if they had good enough tracking like stuff in like they like I don't know if they had that type of technology in 1970. What the fuck? What if he just landed his plane somewhere random? Like I don't know what would be over here, but like I don't know, like a little island or something. What if he just landed there or crashed into a little island on purpose and he survived or died? What if that's what happened? What if he just I don't know. Again, I really don't know what it could be. But maybe he was living on an island somewhere. No, he'd probably be very dead by now. What am I talking about?
Up some friends and fly them back. But it's also reported that he told other officials that he was going to pick up crayfish. And after the disappearance happened, investigations confirmed that both of these stated reasons were untrue. But that's where the facts end. And once again, where the
Hmm.
speculation begins to run wild. All we know is that we have a 20-year-old struggling pilot in training who has an interesting obsession and fear of UFOs, who took a mysterious flight from Melbourne to King Island, and during this flight claimed to have seen a UFO and was never seen again. But it's curious to think of what could have possibly happened. And obviously, since 46 years have passed since this entire situation happened, some theories have popped up. One of the official suspicions comes from the Western Australia Department of Transportation, who stated that Frederick became disoriented, saw his own lights reflected in the water, or saw a nearby island while flying upside down, which is potentially plausible, but there was no communication indicating that Frederick
Now, how the fuck would he get upside down and still stay in the air? I feel like if you get upside down, you know you're upside down, and if you didn't know you were upside down, you would crash because you would try to go up and you'd just crash into the water, right? How would you end up upside down and still be flying? Especially if you're not that good of a pilot, according to all the tests he's failed and stuff like that. How would he be upside down?
Frederick was in such a situation that would have left him upside down. Some people believe that Frederick actually staged his own disappearance, and instead of
That's what I
going
was
to King
saying.
Island, was actually going to Cape Otway, which was possible to fly to with the plane that Frederick was in and with the amount of fuel that he had. And although there's no radar to confirm this activity in the Cape Otway area, Melbourne police did receive reports of a mysterious landing that took place by a light aircraft at the same time that Frederick disappeared. A third and potentially most disheartening theory is that Frederick did this intentionally. Although
Yeah.
interviews with doctors and personal friends of Frederick all
Oops.
stated that this was likely impossible. Which, I mean, nothing's impossible, but if nobody thinks that this is the case, I think there's validity that this might not be the answer. And one of the last major groups of belief involves aliens. Basically, UFOologists claim that UFOs either destroyed Frederick's ship with Frederick inside
UFOologists?
or abducted him and then destroyed his ship. And you could potentially put some validity on these claims due to what.
Well, maybe that could have happened. But if it destroyed his ship, or not his ship, if it destroyed his plane, there would be evidence of that. There would be maybe a sighting or something of a big flash in the sky, depending on how far out he was when he disappeared. There would have to be any sign, metal in the water, stuff like that, parts, body parts, blood in the water, stuff like that. Nothing. There was nothing, though. So I feel like that's out of the question.
Frederick was actually saying in his radio comms. Those are kind of three of the initial theories, but there are actually more modern theories that are definitely worth mentioning. The first comes from Brian Dunning, who made the observation that the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out a few years before this entire situation, and the things that Frederick was saying on the radio kind of sounded similar from some of the dialogue from the movie, not to mention the fact that this movie was also popular with pilots. So with that information, Dunning ultimately speculated that Frederick likely was trying to reenact the scene in real life for his own, personal enjoyment. He was deliberately flying his aircraft in a sporadic manner to kind of put on a show for air traffic controllers. But within him having this fun and saying these lies and flying in an unsafe way, he essentially became disoriented and crashed unintentionally. I'm not sure how valid it is, but I think it's interesting to consider, specifically knowing that he did intentionally fly into clouds when he wasn't supposed to. So it's not like he wasn't against breaking the rules. So if you really loved this movie and really loved aliens, maybe he thought it'd be cool to take a little flight, tell the story on the way, and then once he came back, he'd be like, wow, that was crazy. I had a UFO encounter, and just basically allow that legend to live on as part of his personal lore. But like I mentioned, these are all speculations, and the mystery of the missing pilot, Frederick Valentich, remains to this day unsolved. 46 years and 6 months later. Unfortunately, there's a lot more unsolved missing persons cases. And if you guys truly enjoyed this video and would like me to create a series out of it, just leave a comment below or leave a like. Your support never goes unnoticed and is always appreciated. But with that being said, let's continue to the final story. The year is 1993, and we are days away from the much anticipated Super Bowl weekend. David Glenn Lewis, like almost any man at the time, was excited about Super Bowl weekend. And coincidentally, David was about to have Super Bowl weekend all to himself. David was a lawyer and a family man, and he lived with his wife and daughter in Amarillo, Texas. David's wife and daughter were actually going to Houston for the weekend to have a bit of a getaway, and specifically do some shopping. Now, this is a trip that David would typically be a part of, but because this was Super Bowl weekend, he decided that he'd stay back because he didn't want to miss the big game, and likely just wanted some alone time.
So he just didn't go on vacation with his family or a trip with his family because he wanted to watch the Super Bowl? I guess.
As well. On Friday, January 29th, 1993, David's wife and daughter left for their planned shopping trip in Dallas. But on January 31st, after what I can only imagine to be a fun shopping trip, David's wife and daughter returned home slightly later in the evening, basically right after the Super Bowl ended. But what they came home to was a bit peculiar. The TV was on, the VCR was actually still recording the game, there was 2 freshly made turkey sandwiches in the fridge, there was laundry in the laundry machine, David's wedding ring and watch were on the kitchen counter, but David was nowhere.
Oh, yeah, he just left. Right? He had to have just left, bro. There's no way if he was kidnapped or killed, there'd be evidence. He made them food or made himself food or something, cuz he made food and washed their clothes. If he was robbed or kidnapped, they would take his jewelry. They wouldn't leave it there. He probably just left the TV on because whatever the fuck, and he just left. That's probably what happened. But we're gonna watch the rest of this.
To be seen. David's wife, Karen, obviously assumed David was somewhere nearby, potentially watching the game at a friend's house, although when they didn't find him at all that night, they began to get concerned. The following morning, on February 1st, David's wife, Karen, called the police and reported him missing. But like every other story in this video, this isn't where the story ends.
It looks like
It's where the story begins. And in this story specifically, the twist at the end of it is potentially the most mind-boggling in this entire video. Back to February 1st. What happened? Karen was convinced that her husband wasn't just at a friend's house for the night watching the game, and although she may have been slightly irritated or concerned the night before, this morning she was only concerned, and that concern was growing. Once police were involved, it wasn't long before information began rolling in. Although with all of the information coming to light about the situation, there was
It looks like they have dicks for mouths. I'm sorry I said to say that.
Only more questions being uncovered, and almost no answers. The first pieces of information that became available came from the police. The same day that the report was made, police actually found Lewis's car parked downtown by a courthouse. When the police searched his car, they found all of his keys under the floor mat. Also hidden within the car were David's checkbook, driver's license, and 2 of his credit cards. After police found David's vehicle,
He must have did something, because, like, he must have, like, murdered somebody or something. He has to be on the run to leave all of his stuff behind. He has to be starting a new life or something, because there's no way that you would do that without reason. And no way if someone kidnapped him, they'd leave all of his stuff behind. They'd take that. They'd burn it and shit. They wouldn't just leave it behind as evidence. He obviously left and went somewhere. Alright, I'm gonna stop yapping. I gotta watch the rest of this video.
they checked his bank activity, and it was at that point when the plot only grew thicker, because his bank activity was strange to say the least. On January 30th, the day after his wife and daughter left town, $5,000 was deposited into his account, but it's unknown who did this and why they did this.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it was him, right? What if he got caught up in something so bad during that week that he had to go on the run as a different person and he left his family money? What if that's what happened? That's what it's starting to seem like. He got caught up. Kind of looked like some dude would be part of the mafia or something. I don't know. I'm making shit up, but why deposit 5,000 into an account and just to not use it? He probably is on the run and still loves his family. Probably gave them money or something. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass right now.
And then the next day, the 31st, the day of the Super Bowl, either David or someone using David's card purchased a plane ticket from Amarillo to Dallas.
Yeah, he's
and then
running.
another plane ticket was purchased from Los Angeles to Dallas. Both of these
He's
plane
running.
tickets were in David's name, but it's unconfirmed if either of these plane tickets were used. When the police first brought all of these discoveries to Karen, she was obviously concerned. But little did the police know that Karen had her own bombshell for the police. Karen mentioned to the police that David specifically expressed to Karen that he felt like his life was in danger. Lewis had specifically been a defendant in a lawsuit.
Exactly. He got caught up in something bad. He's leaving his family, but he still loves them. He gave them money. Obviously, that's what's happening right now. Dude, I'm fucking smart. Oh my god.
Brought against him and several other lawyers, although after several months of this lawsuit going on, David was the only defendant who has not yet disposed the case. Some people believe that the law firm that David worked for that was being sued by a previous client were pressuring David into giving a disposition that wasn't fully accurate, trying to make him lie about some of the wrongdoings of the law firm that he worked for the benefit of the law firm. Because all of the other lawyers at this law firm had given a disposition and David hadn't, it definitely could have put a target on his back if he was not willing to comply with their less than integral requests of him. For 11 months following the disappearance, even with all of the weird information that they found initially and continued to find, there was absolutely no sign of David anywhere. Not a motive, not a body, not evidence, nothing. Literally nothing. And after those 11 months, the official conclusion that the authorities came to on this case was that David must have just left on his own accord and decided to start a new life somewhere else without telling anybody. And undoubtedly, that was a hard pill to swallow for the family. But unfortunately, that was the reality they had to accept. And that alone is crazy and peculiar. If the story ended right there, this would definitely be a story worthy of this video. Somebody disappearing without a trace who seemed to have been home hours ago is just mind-boggling. But the story doesn't end here at all, because 10 years after the case was closed, a bombshell was dropped on the entire situation. In 2004, just over 10 years after David initially went missing, a bored police officer in Washington state was researching cold cases while on duty. Something this police officer likely did often. And on this specific day, this police officer had stumbled on the case of David Glenn Lewis. At first, the story was like many others that he read, but what caught his attention was the photo associated with this missing person. This police officer took one look at David and realized that this was somebody that he had not only seen before, but this was a man that he had found dead 10 years ago.
What?
This person that he had found dead in 1993 was actually a hit-and-run case. And because he was so sure that he had seen this man before, he did a bit more digging and tried to line up the dates. And he was able to confirm that the man that he had found dead, he had found only
Oh,
a day after David Lewis was reported missing, meaning that the timelines added up and he had some further digging to do. This is where things get even more strange, because the person this police officer
what?
found in Washington State in this hit and run case, although he looked like David Lewis, he didn't have any identification of being David Lewis. He was an unknown person wearing military fatigues walking down the side of the highway with no
What?
ID and no personal belongings at all. And unfortunately, he was struck by a vehicle and left for dead, which is where the police officer eventually found him. But even though this police officer was certain
He must have been caught. I think I was out of frame. He must have been caught up in something bad because hit and run and left for dead. What? Who does that? And like, why was he wearing military? Hold on. Okay, let me just finish the video. We'll see. Okay, I'll give my opinion on it after. I need to stop yapping.
that these people looked the exact same, and the dates kind of lined up. How could he be sure that these two people were the same person? After all, this hit and run case took place 1,600 miles from where David Lewis supposedly disappeared
Yeah,
from.
I don't think
And
you could
although
travel
there
that
was
far in
plane
one day,
tickets
can
on
you?
David Lewis's credit cards, none of them involved Washington State. So the only way this police officer could know for certain was by getting a DNA test done, which after some time and some convincing, he was able to have the DNA test performed. And the results from that test confirmed that this unnamed man that was found dead on the side of the road on February 1st, 1993 in Washington State was indeed David Glenn Lewis.
But how did he travel that far in probably a day and a half? That what? Well, depending on what state he was in, it could be possible, but how did he get in a military uniform? Why was he on the side of a random road? Who hit and killed him? What happened?
Who was only a night earlier watching the Super Bowl in the comfort of his own home. Nobody knows why David was in Washington State, a place where he had no friends, no family, no connections. Nobody even knows how he got to Washington State. His own personal vehicle was at the courthouse.
Yeah.
He was wearing military fatigues that weren't his. And nobody even knows why he even left his couch, let alone the state. So like I mentioned, even though a decade after this disappearance happened, his body was found and confirmed, nothing about this mystery is solved whatsoever, and no substantial evidence up until today has been discovered. Even with this discovery, even though David specifically claimed that he believed his life was in danger, it is officially believed that David simply got up and decided to leave on his own accord, and there was no foul play whatsoever. For the families,
I don't
truly
believe that.
feel
I
for
feel
them,
like there
because I can't
was a
imagine
little bit
how
of foul
disheartening it is
play.
to have that official conclusion be the case when obviously something was going on here. But unfortunately, this story and the other two we spoke about all have the same ending. No truth is officially known. The causes, the motivations, the truth about what actually happened is still a mystery and might remain a mystery forever. And with that, I would like to once again invite you to leave a comment below if you have any thoughts about these cases. Do you have any additional information about these cases? Is there anything I missed? Do you have a theory? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your comments and I love to spark conversation.
That's actually insane. How did he travel so far in a day and a half? That's not possible. He didn't have a car. He didn't have anything. How did he get into military clothes? Where was he going? That makes no sense at all. I don't know, dude. Okay. This was an amazing video, all right? Give my bro. Oh, I'm not subscribed. Oops. Give my bro. Trust me, bro. Go subscribe to him. Watch some of his videos. He is an amazing he makes really good content. I binge watch his videos before I go to bed. They're great. They're actually great. So go check out Trust Me Bro official. I might watch another one of his videos soon. That was a really good video. Hopefully I didn't yap too much. Hopefully I yapped just the right amount for this video not to be boring. Shout out to JJ Jax Films for, I guess, I don't know. I watch his videos sometimes. I was trying my best to yap a little bit, so I wasn't just one of those reactors who sit here and go, uh-huh, yep, awesome. I don't like being that person. I don't like to react like that. But when I'm watching a Nothing Burger video, which this is not, it's kind of hard to react. I'm not even gonna lie. This is not a nothing burger video. This is a really good video. You should check out his page. You should also check out JJ Jack's Films and Jack's Films himself. He makes some pretty good videos. Um, yeah, I think that is going to be it. See ya.